Well, okay, welcome to the fifth and final part of my interview with John here of Sensible Software. Hope you enjoy it.
And I have really missed. Again, it's very British. What I've really missed is that ability to take the piss, and people
Aye.
aren't taking offence, and they're not.
Yeah.
They just don't give a shit. They just let you do this stuff, and this is really being hammered out of our culture for the last 20 years or so.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really has, and
Aye.
I think we all miss it. I think most British people miss that. You know, you have to be so careful what you say nowadays, and you know that people might get offended when you don't intend them to, and even if they don't get offended, they're not going to get your joke if you tell them, and it's kind of it becomes tedious actually.
I mean,
Like I feel like I've lost a bit of my culture, not
mm,
just me, but like nearly everyone I know, like our
yeah.
age, we
It's
pretty
like,
much
I
do
mean,
the
the
same.
whole, piss taking is a British thing.
Yeah,
Sarcasm is a British thing, and nobody else seems to get it. And yeah, it's absolutely right. I mean, you can't. I was talking about that today at work. You can't do anything now for fear of upsetting somebody. I mean, cannon fodder. I couldn't imagine that really getting released now. Obviously, you upset the. Did you ever get invited back to the British Legion Christmas party or no?
nah, I'm not talking to those guys. They charged just we had to pay 500 quid to get them off our backs.
Aye.
Never bought a poppy since. Much as I do respect what people did in the war and always used to buy poppies,
Yeah.
I bought 250 back in 1993. And unless I live to be like 280, whatever it's going to be, I'm not going to buy another one. No, no, we never heard from them again. But yeah, I mean, one thing we did have to do back in those days, even with cannon fodder, was the blood had to be green in Germany. You couldn't have red blood; it had to be green blood. So we
Perish the thought, bloody hell.
yeah, they're all
See,
aliens. Yeah.
see, obviously, when Sensi Soccer came out and that it was like a new game engine and such little tiny graphics.
Yeah.
You brought Cannon Fodder out. Sensible Golf. I wasn't a fan of that. I'd never really. I don't know. It should work. It absolutely should work. But I don't know. It never really clicked with me.
I think if you want someone who's not a fan of sensible golf, you only got to look at me. I hate sensible golf. I mean,
Mm,
sensible golf is an example where we were biting off more than we could chew as a company. So as I said to you, sometimes we'd push to do 3 games, maybe 4 games at once. And at that time, I was majorly involved in sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and sensible SWAS, which turned into then the next sensible soccer. And my focus was almost most of it was on there. Plus, we were finishing off. Plus, we were finishing off Cannon Fodder 2. And at that same time, Jules Jameson, who was our programmer of Cannon Fodder, also started working on Sensible Golf. And we thought that we could make Sensible Golf was a really good idea. It was meant to be like a Mario Golf thing for Amiga.
yeah.
Um, but the decision was made to make it on the Cannon Fodder engine. And for some reason, we didn't find out until much later on that there were big limitations on the Cannon Fodder engine with the way we could animate stuff and that, which meant that a lot of the fun and humour we wanted to get in the game was hard to get out. And
Mm,
really, to be honest, Jules was getting a bit burnt out by, don't Cannon Fodder, then Cannon Fodder 2 off the back of it, then Sensible Golf. And we all did it because you know, the story of Sensible Software is we got to 1992 and we'd done all right, but we hadn't really made any money. And
mm,
suddenly
mm,
we were in vogue and we were like, yeah, we'll do that. Sensible Golf will do that. Cannon Fodder 2 will do that. SWAS will do that. So we were saying yes to everything because all the
yeah.
values, we were selling games for like, I don't know, 250 grand up front instead of like 90 grand. So you
Mm,
multiply
mm,
that by 3 and you've got a lot of money coming in. And
yeah.
we were just taking on everything. And we realized our value was high at the time. But Sensible Golf really shows where we just overstretched ourselves. We couldn't really do that as the additional game.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's not a bad game, it's lacking that attention to detail and that humour everywhere. And I have to say, personally, I wasn't that involved in a lot of what happened in Sensible Golf or Cannon Fodder 2, because Cannon Fodder 2
Mm-hmm.
is in the same bucket. I was
Mm-hmm.
Stuart. You said you're speaking to Stuart. Stuart was kind of doing the direction role I do on Cannon Fodder 2. We took it on as an experiment almost. But for
Mm-hmm.
Stuart, brilliant game reviewer, but he'd never made a game before. So
Mm-hmm. Aye.
although he understood sensible culture well, which is why we got him in, some of those small touches of when to maybe rein it in, like Purple Alien World, just get taken a bit too far away from what Cannon Fodder was.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And with Sensible Golf, it was kind of, unfortunately for that game, it was a final Amiga game. And they kind of got trapped between, at that time, we're just about to sign this big deal with these 3 games. We hadn't signed it then because we were still choosing between Virgin and Renegade at the time. But all of our creative focus was going on Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll and this new Sensible Soccer to take over from SWAS. And then Cannon Fodder 2 was being done, like I said, by Stuart and the team. And Sensible Golf was just kind of there, but it was just kind of this extra thing that didn't really quite get the love and attention it needed, unfortunately. Which means that, I mean, it's like,
I was going to say, do you think you kind of, it sounds to me like you'd always spread yourself a wee bit too thinly, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we've done. I mean, it was just a bridge too far for the team. We weren't a massive team at the time. We were still probably only 10, maybe 12 people at that time, because we eventually got to 22 when we ramped up for the 3D games, but this was just before then. And we were kind of like at our most stretched limit ever, I think, when we did Sensible Golf on top of everything else. And it just kind of, it was the one that like it showed in the most.
I think, the thing is, if, you'd set the bar, I mean, to me, Sensible Soccer, there's no really, unless you plain hate computer football games, you're not going to like it. But it was, your games that you'd put out were almost like 100%. They were perfect. And so these 2, Cannon Fodder 2 and probably Sensible Golf, I don't know, they just lack that very, very subtle kind of polish and humour, the sense of humour possibly. If they had been released by another company, or that if Cannon Fodder 2 was the original Cannon Fodder and you released Sensible Golf before Sensible Soccer, you would have probably thought they were the best games ever, but you'd set the bar so high, and it was,
I agree with you a lot. I think that, I'm an extremely critical person. It's my job to design games and to oversee development and to rip bits in the games that are wrong, and I've been doing it my whole life. So there's some points where you just have to let go, because otherwise you'd go insane.
Yeah.
But I agree with you very much. I think that we were kind of on a bit of a golden phase where we thought everything we touched turned to gold, if I'm honest, And also we were very overstretched, and we were taking on more people. So as managers, we were having more people to manage and stuff like that. And we weren't really set up to do management at all. We didn't want to have these corporate management layers in the company at all. But we kind of almost needed it when you get to a bigger volume of games and people. And I think that in any case, regardless of that, those games were good because they were meticulously scrutinized, particularly by me, constantly, to be perfected, and all the imperfections to be taken out and all the touches to be added in there. And just, it was impossible to have the focus in that many areas at that level of depth simultaneously. And it's kind of a lesson. Like, if you want to do, it was sensible for us to do 2 or 3 games at a time economically. But to go beyond that was not sensible. It was like kind of too much. We needed to reel it back in again. I mean, if we talk about what we did after Sensible Golf, we go to our 3D Warner deal briefly. So what happened was an interesting story, and what happens when you get to this. We were like the Golden Boys at the time. We were like Sensible Software. We had all these hits come out back to back. Everyone knows that they sold really well, made a lot of money, and blah blah blah, whatever. But we were offered £1 million a game to move from the Amiga onto these 3D machines, but previously we're getting, the top was 250, most of them were like 100 or something like that advanced. I mean, when you're offered £1 million a game for the first time, and then it's like, okay, we want to do 3 games, and everyone's like, okay, so it's 3 million then. And we're like, wow, like, this is insane money. You got to understand. And you realize this probably isn't going to happen again. So when anyone asks why did we move from the Amiga, that's the reason. We were offered 4 times as much money to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the mistake we made, what happened was, at that point in our company, we basically had 2 main contacts. So after WizKid didn't really sell very well, we stopped working with Ocean a bit again. And then we had 2 basic clients as a business. Virgin, who did Cannon Fodder and Sensible Golf, and Renegade, who did Sensible Soccer Series. So we had 2 really good partners in 2 titles that were, with Sensible Golf and Cannon Fodder, that were really good franchises, would be the modern word. And you could do regular yearly updates of Sensible Soccer, and Cannon Fodder was going places. And we really, really wanted to keep working with both of them. But both of them demanded that we did all of our product through them only. They made us choose us or them. And we, at the same time, me and Chris had this game design from years beforehand. We're going back before Sensible Software existed, for this game called Drugged Out Hippie. And Drugged Out Hippie was about a guy who had 7 drug habits. And he had, and the idea was you had, like, if he was a speed freak. So, like, he'd have to take speed and then the game would speed up, and then he'd do acid and the game would go weird. And you had to maintain all 7 drug habits at once in the game, like in parallel. And the story was, that he was in a band, and his band had borrowed $2,000 off of some Hell's Angels to buy a van to transport their band around. And you had 2 weeks to pay the Hell's Angels back before they beat the shit out of you. And you had to support your drug habits and do gigs and whatever to make the money back. So that was the initial idea for Drugged Out Hippie. It was like a funny game, yeah. And then we decided to, like, flesh this out into a game called Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. So it became about a guy who went around in his band, and the first part was all about avoiding these Hell's Angels, and then his band getting signed up and going to LA and making it big, and then just loads of stupid things about snorting drugs and shagging people and singing and whatever, just like I guess you could call it a bit like a Spinal Tap kind of thing. But this band they started off as like a kind of a punk stroke heavy metal thing. And then they went through all sorts of eras to, like, psychedelic music and kind of like folk stuff and disco, and they just kept on changing the thing. And then myself and Richard were writing all this parody music, going through the. We wrote a 42-track album to go with this. It's actually finished, so it jumps all over the place. And the game was a point-and-click adventure, it was kind of like Monkey Island or Leisure Suit Larry, but taken on to a different level. And actually, the way Heavy Rain turned out years later, it wouldn't have been that similar to Heavy Rain to play. It was like a context-sensitive cursor. What I really, really regret with Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll is that we didn't get that new point-and-click adventure engine out, because that was the real innovation in the game, apart from the, like, funny subject matter about rock and stuff. Yeah. And it really frustrated me that we never got that. And that was... We had many programming problems when we went to this 3D, and that was basically the programmer just wasn't up to it. The first lead programmer we got, and it cost us that game. And then we didn't respond until too late, and it was unresurrectable. So we had all this art and all this music. The artist did loads of brilliant art, and we had loads of music, but we didn't have the engine working. So it was anyway. So that was a great thing. And then we had Sensible Soccer 3D, which was a great idea, which turned into a 3D nightmare, as you probably saw.
Yeah.
We had another game called Have a Nice Day, and that was a funny game. So me and Chris had this other fantasy game idea called Office Chair Massacre. So the idea was you're in an office chair with, like, and you got like actually someone's done this recently in a game, believe it or not. But you got armrests on the chair, and you got spinny wheels on the bottom. And the idea was that you had a machine gun on each arm of the chair, and you could fire both of them to go flying backwards. Like they're in the office, right? So the idea was that, like, it was a play on corporate politics. So the idea was that it went through the levels, but basically started off in an office with some sales staff, and you and 3 other guys gunning for promotion to be the executive vice president of sales or whatever, in the Texas branch of this big corporation. And basically, you and these 3 other guys, like you as, say, the yellow guy, and they're the green, red, and blue guy. Then you got all these sales offices, and you got to go to the office, and you got to like intimidate them by maybe shooting a couple of them into working for you instead of the red guy, and then getting them to do the sales for you. And then as you're doing that, the green, red, and blue guys are going around shooting everyone else as well, and then you're shooting them. And the idea is that when you hit a certain level of sales, however you get about it, that guy gets the promotion and wins. So then you got I'm now the vice president of whatever it is. Then you go to the next level. So then you got sales, but plus you've also got an advertising department. So now you've got to keep them on your side, and then you got that. Then you got the legal department and the market. So it was a play on corporate stuff. This was meant to be on the PlayStation. That was meant to be on PlayStation, and Sex and Drugs and the football game was on PC. But the problem was we had zero experience of 3D programming in our office, and we massively, massively struggled. And anyway, what we should have done at that time is not done Have a Nice Day at all, and said, let's do that after we've done the other stuff. It's a great idea, but 3 is too many. Let's resist the urge to try and get 3 million quid and settle on 2 million quid, so we got a chance of finishing stuff. That's the first thing we should have done. The second thing we should have done is insisted that Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, which was right up their street, would have gone to Virgin. And when we actually went to resell the game years later, when it came back, when everything fell apart, Virgin was the only company that had money for it. And it was really a Virgin game. We should have said, Virgin, your Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, Renegade, we're staying with you, because Renegade was bought by Warner, so it's the same thing. We're staying with you on the football games, and that's it. We're not going to go all in one bucket like both of you are insisting. We like both of you. We're going to stay with both of you. Just from a business point of view, it's two full sources of income if something goes wrong in one side. And I wish, in retrospect, I wish that's what we would have done. I wish that instead of Chris doing Have a Nice Day and that not happening quite so well, I wish he'd have been leading the programming on Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll. And we'd have done that through Virgin, and I wish we'd have stayed with Sensible Soccer in Warner, and we'd have got to the end of these two difficult 3D projects, and then done Have a Nice Day afterwards as the next thing to do after that. In retrospect, hindsight's a wonderful thing. That's definitely what we should have done, but unfortunately we didn't. We went, they're going to give us, this is amazing. In our minds, we were like this. Every game we made has sold really well. Even Sensible Golf and Cannon for the 2 did okay, everything's done well. Everything we touch turns to gold. No, we're just going to do the same thing, but they're going to give us 4 times more money. Wow. This is how we're thinking. We're not seeing the extra work. We're just thinking, well, we went from 8-bit to 16-bit, and it was so easy. It's just the same thing again, And if they're stupid enough to give us £1 million instead of 250,000, great. We'll take it. We'll do it 3 times over. So, then we learn. Oh my God! So everyone else, you've got to appreciate also the Sensible that we were the last company almost of that era of companies to move to 3D, because we were cleaning up on this 2D Amiga stuff. We were the top 3 in Europe at the time, I think. So we were the last people to make the technological move into the 3D. And when we did, we were so far behind. I mean, we didn't know how to do it. We didn't know how many staff we needed. We didn't know the extra management layers we needed. We didn't know how to manage the artists, because the 3D bit came before the art bit. So we really were clueless on this stuff. And unfortunately, those lessons got learned at the same time.
I suppose there's a reason why games nowadays are thousands and thousands of people. You went from creating 16-bit games with 3 or 4 people, and then suddenly you're moving into 3D. That's why there's people who are programming, they're there just to get the game engine and all that kind of stuff. So at what point did you say, right, listen guys, enough? In fact, sorry, before I get onto that, what do you call it? I was stupidly excited when Xbox Sensei Soccer was coming out for the Xbox 360. Again, I don't know. It's not got the same playability of the Amiga one at all. Were you guys involved in programming that at all? That was through Codemasters, wasn't it? I think.
It's Codemasters. Yeah, I've got a very good relationship with Codemasters and worked with them on and off for many years. But no, in that particular case, they took the Amiga and they ported it to the Xbox 360 and added a couple of other things. And my job was just to come in and go, yeah, it's all right. I didn't really do much. It was a very technical exercise, basically. The problem is a lot of the feeling for a game comes from the machine itself, and when you go to another
Yeah.
machine, it doesn't feel the same. And
Mm.
people, it doesn't show up in slow games, but in twitch games. Sensible Soccer is a real twitch game.
Yeah. Oh,
If
aye,
you
aye.
lose an eighth of a second, you enormously feel it. And
Mm.
and it, you know the only perfect version of Sensible Soccer is the Amiga versions. I'd say particularly 96, 97. I think it was the very last one we did where we really refined everything. That is the pinnacle sensible software game,
Mm.
because we were still developing different versions of SWAS even through doing the 3D stuff. And it's like I said, it's like these. I said it earlier. It's like these prehistoric eras just forcing everyone forwards. We were the masters of this 16-bit era. We were on our sixth, seventh game on the machines. We knew them like the back of our hands. Yes, we got it a bit wrong. We can for the two insensible golf, but that was because we were stretched too thin, and
Mm.
really, it wasn't because we'd lost our skills. It's because we were kind of like stretching it too much. But yeah, I mean that 3D stuff was just like, I don't know. It's like someone saying, "I can play a recorder," and then you give them I don't know, some like futuristic saxophone to play, and they're like,
Uh,
"What is this?" Nothing to do
I
with it.
suppose I remember buying. I can't remember what one it was. It was for the PlayStation. It was like 3D Sensi Soccer, and to kind of equate it, I'm a massive Laurel and Hardy fan, and then my
Uh-huh.
sister bought me a couple of years ago. It was like some colorized versions, and it's like, nah, it's wrong. And I think putting Sensi into a 3D engine, it just didn't work. I think the simplicity of the graphics coupled with, as you say, just the Twitch gaming, that's what made the game. See when you went to World of Sensible Soccer came out, I think the difficulty of actually playing the game, it was harder to score. Was that a conscious decision, or
No,
was that my imagination?
it's like we do. Like I say, we're doing the social soccer now. So
Yeah.
the thing is, it's like when you've got a game like that, there's so many sensitive moving parts. It's like imagine 1,000 matchsticks, and you're trying to make exactly the same matchstick house you made last year with the same number of matchsticks. It's like that. It's like this. There's
Yeah.
so many things which can just slightly push it away, and
Mm.
identifying the reason why, for example, it's harder to score. We've been through exactly the same thing with social soccer in the last few months. It's
Mm.
like, well, maybe it's because the goalkeeper. There's something that's slightly off at the moment for us, for example, on the goalkeeper's perception where the ball is in 3D space. There's something wrong with the maths, so we know we've got to fix that. But unfortunately, fixing that for us is quite complicated because it goes deeper into the game engine. So you're going to dig down to the foundation, change that bit, and then come up and then perfect that bit. Then it's what animation is the goalkeeper doing, and then it's how much assistance did you give on the shot to the player, or how much you let it be the natural angle, and at what point do you put it in, and when you bend the ball, exactly how much loft goes on the ball, and exactly how much bend per millisecond that you're adding
Aye.
it, and where's the window where it starts and when it stops, and then nowadays it's like. And when you're on touchscreen and when you're on joystick, what's the difference in the timing of the actual touch as opposed to the joystick? Because it's physically a different thing. And it gets
Mm-hmm.
so fucking complicated. What you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to do is something that sounds simple, but you're going through machinery and you're going through calculations to achieve an end result. And the slightest bit of a change, like let's just add, I don't know, 0.15 of a degree to the bend of the ball every 0.01 seconds and see what difference that makes a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
so getting the configuration so it is like exactly what you want is hard. And as you saw with even Sensible Soccer, if you ever played it on a PC, it's a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
speed game. It's a
Aye.
different speed game because the processor is
Mm-hmm.
different in the
Mm-hmm.
machine. And even if the code is identical, the processor is managing it in a different way. So it's very, very, very hard to
Aye.
get that touch and feel exactly like you want it
Exactly what it was. I remember when I went from the Amiga to the PC. I mean, I bought a PC because I saw Doom, and I'm like, I've got to have that.
to.
And then I thought, oh wait a minute, if I sell the Amiga, I can't play sensible soccer. This was back in the day. You couldn't afford to have two computers. If you wanted to buy a new computer, you had to sell the existing one. So I thought, oh fuck it, I can't play sensible soccer. All right, okay. And I sold my Amiga, and then I got the PC, and then World of Sensible Soccer came out on the PC, and I had Dancer, and I bought it. And it just didn't feel the same. I was so used to the Amiga one, and it was the only time I thought I'm going to need to buy an Amiga just so I can play Sensei Soccer. And I mean, I'll tell you a true story. My brother-in-law at the time, he bought an Amiga, and the only fucking game he ever played was Sensei Soccer. It was legend, absolute legendary. But yeah, the PC version looked the part. You know, box is the same, the graphics look the same, but it just didn't feel the same.
You know, I've been to one that they hold a Sensible Soccer World Cup every year.
Aye, that's right.
I was invited to one of those. I lost every game, and it drove me crazy because I'm pretty competitive, and I managed to lose the game. I was 1-0 up in 89 minutes and lose it before extra time somehow. But the guys there, they actually have a separate PC and Amiga event for their World Cup.
That's a different game, isn't it?
They consider it to be a different game, and you know, I say it like this: we spent so much time perfecting those Amiga versions of games, and people say, "Well, what do you think of the PC conversion, or even the SD version, or the Xbox version?" I'm like, "Well, put it this way: if I spent ages writing a perfect book in English, how much do I care about the Portuguese translation? Because that's what it feels like to me. You know, it's like you can't. These machines are what drive you insane. Like their refusal to conform to precisely what you want them to do is what drives us insane. If you manage to discipline one machine to do something well, then don't lose sleep worrying about the second machine not making it precise. Just accept the fact that's the way it's going to be, because the computers don't care, and they'll never be the same. They'll never conform exactly, and you know, nothing. I mean, look at HTML fucking up layout. I mean, I'm a guy who does graphics and cares about layout. HTML, the invention of it is fucked up layout beyond anything you've ever seen in your life. From an artist's point of view, everything's off center, everything's emphasized wrong, you know. And now it's been consumed as normality, which is good for efficiency in some ways and makes things run. But aesthetically, artistically, it's horrendous. And you've just got to let it go, you know. And part of that is going, you know, you asked me about the Xbox 360 version. What do I think? Oh, whatever. I mean, at that point, we'd already made Sensible Soccer, I don't know, 13, 14 years earlier anyway. I mean, you know, does it matter? No.
I mean,
to me, the challenge now is, it always has been making the next game. The current game is Sensible Soccer. So how can we make this good? And part of that has been exactly what you said, actually. You can't replicate. We could have called this game Sensible Soccer, by the way. And I said, no, I won't call it Sensible Soccer because it's not Sensible Soccer. I know what Sensible Soccer is. It's what you said. It's that 2D version that we did on Amiga. That's what it is. And anything we do after that is, and I've done it enough times with the 3D version we tried back in the 98, and then even in 2006 we made a pretty good game with Codemasters, a pretty good Sensible Soccer version, but it's not the same as Sensible Soccer as in 2D. And then you got the Xbox 360, but none of those are Sensible Soccer. That's why we consciously chose to make Social Soccer a related but different name, because it is not the same thing, and I wouldn't want to fuck Sensible Soccer up by doing a game with the same name and doing something different that would not be to the expectation of
I think a big part of, I suppose, Sensei Soccer is getting the old zip stick, having the proper joystick. I mean, my mate, he could always score the diving headers. He used to use a bloody Mega Drive controller, and I could never get a hang of gamepad. But yeah, I think the controller as well. But it's a bit like, I mean, I don't want to go back in time, but I mean, Wizzball, you know, best C64 game ever. I got it for the Atari ST. Was it Peter Johnson converted it?
Yeah, Peter did it. Yeah.
It's just It's two great games, but if you've played the original, you'd never look back. You would never want to play.
I mean, it's just it's unfortunate that the way the computers work, they're very, very sensitive things when you're making something you feel a game. It's hard to describe it, but a game is a lot about the feel of it. And when the machines are not set up to duplicate feeling at all, they're set up to maybe duplicate graphics and sound and that, but they don't really. And it's kind of it's a bit of it's my biggest frustration in my career is that there's not just one format of computer that sells forever.
Aye. I get you.
I mean, because on just on an economic level, no one buys sensible soccer anymore because the Amiga's been defunct for God knows how long. On a practical portfolio building as an artist, all of my back catalogue is out of date and not usable anymore. That hurts a little bit, If you were talking to, I mean, I think I've had now it's 11 number one games in my life. If you were talking to a musician that had 11 number one tracks that were still selling now and had been continuing to sell in a 36-year run from the start, imagine how much more money you make than you make something which everyone says is great, and then 3 years later no one can play it anymore because the new machines come along. So just and that all that means then is that the old machine died. So what does everyone do? They get the new machine and they spend all their time making those games that were on the old machine. So it's really bad for innovation as well, because then you get, you think about how ludicrous it is. Like you've got Bejeweled is on a PC. Then someone makes Candy Crush on the phone, which, by the way, I think is brilliant, because Candy Crush is a brilliant Bejeweled game. And then, so you've got Candy Crush, which is a good copy of an existing game on an old machine. But then thousands of other people copy Candy Crush. So they're now doing really bad copies of something which is a copy anyway. and it's like, why waste your time? It's okay, kids are doing it for fun at home, but these are coming out on commercial on the platforms, the app stores and stuff like that we can buy. And this it's just a waste of everybody's time and effort. Bejeweled was great when it came out. Candy Crush is a superior version, brilliant. The rest, unless they're going to up the game or do something new, don't need to exist.
Inferior. Yeah.
Don't need to exist. It's just cluttering the market with shit, basically. Sorry to be harsh. That's the reality.
So at what point, so obviously you were talking about sex, drugs and rock and roll, and at what point did you decide, listen guys, we've had fun, but we're going to have to call it a day?
Well, I can tell you the story with that. So what happened was this. So if you can imagine, we've signed this $3 million deal with Warner. We are about a year and a half in, 2 years in. We've delivered them nothing finished. They've given us 2 million quid because we're struggling with our programming. It started to get very hairy, shall we say, because but basically the contract we signed with Warner was amazing for us. It was just, I look at all the things I've done over the years in terms of business. That's the best bit of business I've ever been involved.
Yeah.
The contract was so in our favour. It's like every month we just get paid. So it didn't matter what we did, they would have to pay us. But what happened was it hit to a point where, understandably, we were struggling with the 3D programming and the stuff wasn't getting delivered as it should have been delivered. And they were like, well, we can't do anything, so we're just going to not pay you at all. So they basically didn't pay us for 6 months. They paid us nothing. And we had 20 guys. So we got quite a big team. And myself and Chris were putting in I think it's either 20, I think it might have been 40 grand a month each, 20 or 40 grand a month each into the company to keep it alive. And we went, we can't do this forever.
No, you can't.
Basically, we're still earning money from Sensible Soccer, but it's coming in and it's just going, like our money's going, and then we're taking our personal money and putting it back in to prop the company up. And that's what was happening for quite a while. And then we were like, well, and then Warner was saying to us, this sex, drugs and rock and roll, it's a bit, Warner got bought by GT. This is what happened. So Warner got bought by a company called GT, which were allied to Walmart. And this is a Bible Belt American company, like from the proper worshippers. And they got this sex and drugs and rock and roll game about shagging people and snorting cocaine. And a guy called Frank Herman, who was running GT UK office in Marylebone. Frank was an old guy. He'd been around for a long time. He was involved in Master Trike in the early days. But in a previous life, he had been the guy to import the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to the UK back in the 70s. And he was very used to dealing with controversial products and how it works. And, you know, and he said, I remember him saying to me, are you sure this needs to be cocaine? Can't it be something like space dust? And I said, no, it's meant to be cocaine. And he said, look, I've done this stuff before. And he said, I've got to warn you, you're going to be hoisted by your own petard. Now, do you know what that means? I'm going to buy your bollocks, basically. It was trying to say to me, you're being too ballsy about this. Just reel it in, because I can tell you the way this is going to go. I've been here before. You know, I'm trying to give you advice like as an uncle. Everyone called him Uncle Frank. You know, at the time we're like, fucking wants to change our game. But he was trying to help us, actually.
Yeah.
And we were like, no, we want to do it our way, whatever. So anyway, what happened was we reached this standoff with GT. So our contract said we had to deliver the work that we were doing. So we just continued to deliver the work and do it and do it and do it. So it went from us struggling with programming to a different problem, which was good for us. The problem now was they wanted out from the game, but they weren't saying it to us because they didn't like the content of it. And we were really struggling with the programming, but we had too much money in there to lose to say we wanted to throw the towel in, because then they'd ask for their money back. And me and Chris had personally underwritten this stuff. So this was going to ruin us, and all the money we'd made was all going to disappear, you know. So we were like, we've just got to keep on going. So we went 6 months of not getting paid. And in the end, we got called in by GT into their office. And they said, you know, this Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll game, and also Have a Nice Day, which is also struggling from 3D as well. This was Chris doing it, but he was still struggling with it. And like, we really can't continue to do these games anymore. We have to pull them. And we're like, okay. But the key thing was they didn't want their money back. This is all that we cared about in the whole thing.
Well, that's nice.
See, there's a problem. So we're like, okay, so we'll just do the football game then. So we kind of like, we walked out of their office, and then we got as far away down the road as we could, and then we jumped for joy down the road. We're like, fuck, this hell we've been living in for 6 months. You know, we could just see ruin, you know, for 6 months. And suddenly we were free. So we basically, what we agreed with GT was we would ditch Have a Nice Day. We'd take Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, and we'd try to resell it to another publisher, and that they would get a cut of the money if we could sell it on. That's what we agreed. Unfortunately, when we did that process, by now we've moved on from 95 to 97, 98. And the market's got more Americanized in this time. It's got really the companies come in. And we saw 20 companies, and everyone was scared of it. I mean, they were interested in the game, but they were like scared of it. And the real thing holding us back was, it was obvious to anyone we demoed it to that the programming wasn't in shape. We knew that was the real underlying problem. Even if you love the 18 plus stuff and the stupid, it's just stupid, kind of like young ones, or, you know, humor, you know, just British, like very Viz, like offensive but funny. Even if you like that, you could see the programming wasn't working, and we could show the music videos and music and graphics and these ideas and talk it up, but the game was saying, I'm not quite in good enough shape and I'm a risk. And the only company that offered us a deal was Virgin, but unfortunately Virgin said we can only really give you a good deal for what we'll sell in the UK, because we can't see this doing that well outside of the UK. And the money they offered us just wasn't enough to cover the rest of the development costs we knew we were going to incur. So we had to turn it down, unfortunately. That's what I mean by I wish we'd have signed with Virgin in the first place. You know, a lot of the problems would have gone away, because they're also deterred by the half the money they're paying us has got to go to GT, which they don't want because they're a rival. So unfortunately, that's what happened. So we spent, we just decided that was it. Enough was enough. We had to just let the game go. Tell some of the guys, and at the same time, actually, we had to do this transition to making people employees under the thing I told you about, the Tony Blair thing, at the same time. So I had to say to everyone, look, we've got to make you an employee, but at the same time, you might not have a job in 3 or 4 months. If we can't resell this game, then the sex, drugs, rock and roll staff is going to be it. It's going to be gone.
Yeah.
Eventually that went. And then Sensible Soccer went from 1 release into like 2 or 3 releases. And the first release came out. And I can't remember if we did the second release or not. Maybe we did, but it just wasn't. It was obvious to everyone it wasn't the same. It wasn't the Sensible Soccer people knew and loved. And it's kind of a good lesson for the market, really, because what happened was the market, i.e. the retail, was demanding 3D games. So then they go down to the publishers and say, we need 3D games. So then the publishers come to us and say, you've got to make Sensible Soccer 3D. Then we make it 3D. Then all the fans say, this is shit. We don't want it. Where's the 2D one?
Aye, I think that was such a common thing when the PlayStation came out. Everything. I mean, like you had things like Streets of Rage, and they brought out one Fighting Force, I think it was called. They just put everything into 3D, and it just didn't work.
It was one of those. It's those fashions. It's like a while back, everyone was really into VR, and now it's kind of like.
What's your take on VR?
Well, here's my take on it. We made actually a very good version of Sociable Soccer on VR recently. It still exists, but it was hard to get buy-in from. Here's my real take on VR. The companies driving VR are very, very American. The ones that the big players on the hardware thing. And when we tried to sell. If you can imagine playing a game which plays a bit like Sensible Soccer in VR, it was fun. I mean, it was good. It was really innovative and good. And you're looking down at the pitch and looking around, and it was really, really good. It really had something. But we couldn't get the traction because we couldn't get someone who was into football to give it a chance. And my take on VR is 2 things. Firstly, on a commercial level, the kind of games that people are engaging are based on the kind of games that are being commissioned. There seems to be a certain type of people in the industry attracted to VR, and they have a pretty closed perspective on what a game means and what a game can do. Now, having taken them, fucking good. I mean, we took Social Soccer on VR twice, and it was displayed in the London Science Museum in the last year. And it was really good. And like we got kids and adults playing it against each other and really enjoying it. But I think that the problem with VR is that it's not that comfortable to play something when you're blind. And it makes you feel vulnerable, and it's very niche and gimmicky. And I think having done it in the London Science Museum, it's a really good place to do it. It's like a place you go for a special event, you take your kids out, your little boy. There was amazing. There was a little boy. I remember we put it on a 4-year-old boy, and he was like, he's looking at the stadium. He's not playing for football at all. It's like, wow. And you can see the impact it was having on kids, and it was really, really nice. And we did a bunch of game shows actually in Germany and stuff with it. It's a real good game show thing, having done that with VR. But I think in your house, when you're going around with a stick, smashing your nan's vase off, making your mum like 30 years ago, I don't think it works. I think it's about danger. It's about the environment, and that's what I think about it. I think that we've tried VR with this, even with cinema going back to the 50s. It's a gimmick, but it's not. The only really good thing I've ever seen in VR is Avatar, the film. That was good.
I would agree with you. And you know what I was saying? I've got a whatever the hell it's called, an Oculus Quest thing, and I think I always compare VR to, like, I don't know, eating. I was going to say caviar. I've never fucking tried caviar, but eating some really rich chocolate cake. Yeah. It's nice to have a wee bit every now and again, but I can't ever see VR taking over the place that you're lying back in your settee with your joystick and just playing, firing up and having a game of whatever it is. It will never, unless we get to a stage maybe in 30 years' time, like you get in Total Recall or something, you can just lie back and go, I'm not going to say the word Alexa because it will start playing something, but you can say VR, boom, and you're suddenly, you're in a game. I mean, one of probably my favourite VR game is Jeff Minter put out Moose Life. Have you tried it?
I believe that when we were
It's
demoing Social Soccer in VR, Jeff was
oh,
demoing that game, and they're still behind
Moose.
us.
Aye,
It
Moose
makes
Life
us.
is a dog's bollocks. Jeff, I mean, he makes a perfect kind of game, simplistic, and it's just lots of it's just like it's like psychedelia, lots of shit
Yeah,
going on, laser shows, and, and brilliant. But I mean, it's. I think until we get to a stage, the fact that I mean, I've got a VR sitting over there, and it's probably never been charged up for about 6 months. It's too. It's still. I think we're in a society now where we're so lazy that you can sit on the couch and you think. I mean, I was wanting to. What was I wanting to watch? I was wanting to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's a film I go to when I want cheered up,
yeah,
and I couldn't. I was trying to watch it on this thing on my computer, and I couldn't get it working. And I looked to the side, and I've got it on DVD, and I was too lazy to actually get off the settee and put it in the bloody thing. That's how we're just so fucking lazy. And I think until we get to a stage where you can just say, Alexa VR, boom, and you're in it. You don't have to fanny about with
yeah.
headphones and all this kind of bollocks. I think it's. I wouldn't say it's a gimmick because there it's kicking off already.
Mm.
I think until we get to that stage, I think it's always going to be a niche thing. I mean, I don't know if you've tried Wipeout in VR. I get
No.
motion sickness, but honestly, imagine the best looking Wipeout ever. But
Mm-hmm.
you're inside the cockpit. I mean, it's the future. It's the future, but I can't play it because I feel sick. But
I get motion sickness as well, so I'm very well aware of that. Yeah.
yeah, one of the games I bought and I've never played it. I've played it very briefly. It's a Half-Life, not Alexa, whatever it's called. It's for
Mhm.
VR, and I've got a lot of mates who've played it, and they say it is the most amazing experience. And I've played it briefly, and you're picking up you're picking up
Mhm.
something, and you're like that, and you're turning around. It's like this is just a mental. It's
Yeah.
just incredible. I don't think it's a gimmick. I think it's something you pick up and play now and again. But I think until we get to the stage where we don't have to put on headphones or things in your head, I think it's never going to really take off.
Oh, there's a couple of things. The way we made our football game work well in VR, and the way we reduced motion sickness down to zero is really simple. You have a stationary camera, so all you do is rotate your
Aye,
head. So we just
aye,
put a camera on the halfway line that you would in football, and look at that end for the goal or that end, and it works. There's zero motion sickness, zero.
aye, aye.
As someone who's sensitive to it, I know what this means. The second thing is there's another unspoken thing with VR. It's an incredibly self-indulgent thing to do in a family house. Like, you know, you can imagine. There's one thing with you playing sensible soccer with your mate and your wife's going to come to bed. Another thing with you blindfolded in a room, and she's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's just a different feeling about it.
It's meant. It's mental. I've seen me. Well, I mean, when I last used it, you're sitting playing Half-Life, and you think I better go to my bed. You take it off, and it's pitch dark. You're sitting there in the pitch dark, and probably somebody outside saying, "What the fuck is that guy doing?"
Yeah,
It's the most antisocial thing ever playing
it
a
is.
VR
It
game.
is. It's kind of it's antisocial. It cuts you off from real life, which could potentially be dangerous for some, for kids or
Aye,
whatever,
no, of
or
course. Yeah.
calling to you or whatever. And it's kind of it does mean you can damage your real house. I mean, I think that I think that there's this fantasy about what's that film where people are living in a computer game and they're really just lying in like things a bit like sunbeds, like doing nothing. Um, anyway, there's a film about that stuff. But and we've heard these stories about the woman who looked after her baby in Half-Life whilst her real baby died. Did you remember that one from a few years back?
Christ, no, is that right? No, I've never heard that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah, something like that.
Jesus.
But I mean, I don't know if it's just like an urban myth, but there is that feeling with VR that it's very much just that step further into,
Mm.
it's not just when I talked about World of Warcraft, I got to, I think 60 is the top, isn't it? So I got to 30 and I said, you're not going to play this game anymore.
Mm.
You've gone from doing this a bit to doing it too much and
Obsessionally,
affecting your
yeah.
work. Yeah, and you make yourself cut off. But I think there's one thing to be like up late with your computer, but then to be up late with your VR headset on, locked in an alternative world for a protracted period of time. It's just maybe a step a little bit too removed from normality. In other words, where we've gained in computer games some acceptability in society as being normal, I think if you saw loads of people locked away in headsets for protracted periods of time, we'd start to think there's a madness. Did you see that film called, I think it's called Her? Did you see the film Her? Right, so
No, no.
Her, I believe Scarlett Johansson's in it. And basically what it's about is it's quite a funny concept actually. There's this kind of like virtual girlfriend you can have, and she talks to you. So she's always talking to you, and all these guys are falling in love with this voice on a phone that's constantly phoning you up, and she's kind of like your virtual girlfriend, but she's got 2,000 guys on the go at the same time. This virtual girlfriend. And you look at the street and you see everyone walking down the road lost and talking in their phones and or with their headphone things on, but lost in this world of not really connected. And even I see it sometimes, like, I guess since lockdown we've not been out enough to see it, but you'd see like hordes of sometimes, especially younger people, walking with headphones on or on their phones locked away. And I realised that whole thing I watched is now becoming real, was becoming real. And I think there's a danger with VR. It can just be that
step too much. Yeah.
That step too much, yeah. And I think that also it's health-wise, you don't want to be strapped into a VR machine for too long. But having seen it in the Science Museum where you give people like a 15-20 minute experience, I think it's brilliant in that environment, and that's where I see it going. You know,
I tend to agree with you. I mean, it's a fantastic thing. It's a phenomenal thing. I mean, it really is. But I think to actually become the main way to play a game, I don't think that's a particularly healthy thing. You know,
I think it's I don't know what we can quite equate it to, but it's something which needs to find its place in a live environment. It's a bit like karaoke. You know, like karaoke's great if you go out to a karaoke club, and I love karaoke, and I've done tons of it, especially when I've been working in Finland. But I wouldn't want it around my house all the time.
Yeah,
and that's a bit how I feel about it. It's kind of like a going out experience rather than an at-home experience. It's hard to understand why, but there you go. Anyway,
listen,
when more are we going to wrap up?
I was just going to say, John, we're coming up to 4 hours. I've got about 3 or 4 questions, so I'll just make them quick.
Go.
Excellent. Obviously, I've touched on Sociable Soccer. I did buy the first release on Steam. When is that going to be? I know you're working on a sort of a mobile version. When do you reckon is there going to be? When's the sort of final PC one going to come out?
I can tell you this because there will be an announcement. There'll be an announcement very shortly, and this would be quite good for you to have because it's kind of like we've not told other people about this. So there's a little bit of news for you to carry, but we've just recently signed it with a publisher on PC and console. It's due to come out in the first half of next year.
Brilliant.
It will be. That's about as much as I'm prepared to say at the moment.
Yeah, excellent. Because I think, like a lot of people, I was a bit disappointed when I thought, oh, it's not getting made anymore. And I was kind of googling it, and I believe that you guys were working on like mobile versions in China. And I thought, oh, this one's been kind of left half kind of baked, and I thought it's never really going to kind of come out, but it will be coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me explain what's happened with it. It's worth explaining it to people. So we started off with Sociable Soccer as with the intention of making a totally cross-platform game. So across PC, consoles, mobile, etc. When we initially launched it, we did it on a Kickstarter for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox in the end of 2015. When that Kickstarter transpired, and we knew quite quickly that we weren't going to get the amount of money we needed in for it to make it happen, we then had a bit of freedom to, rather than go, oh, we haven't got the Kickstarter, we went, okay, so let's just choose what we want to do. So we continue to develop it, and we continue to develop it and push it with PC as the lead platform, but with all the other platforms borne in mind. Now, what happened was we put it out at the end of 2019, I think it was. Was it? No, 2017 we put it out. We put it out in 2017 in around about December as an early access on Steam. And the reason we did that was A, to give people a taster of it, and B, when you've got a game that's existed for so long and then it's not really going anywhere, you kind of need that as a momentum as a team as well. So we put it out there to give it life and substance and not just be a concept and an idea. And at that time, we were still like hunting around for publishing partners. We hadn't really found one. We didn't really want to self-publish, as I mentioned to you earlier. And we, but we, what was in our control and power was to self-publish in early access. So we chose it as a kind of step to get us up and running. Then what happened was that we, about 4 months after we did that, I think it was 5 months. I can't remember the exact time frame of this. But anyway, we met this Chinese publisher called Crazy Sports. And they said, we're looking for football games on mobile. We were introduced to them. And we said, well, we got a football game and we're looking to do it on all the platforms. So, yeah, we got mobile, no problem. And we had mobile versions kicking around. We had some kind of early mobile version on us. But anyway, they now offered us some money to make the mobile version instead, which when you've been working on a game for like 2.5 years, as we had at that point, we obviously were very interested in a contract to get some money because we were living on fumes, basically.
Yeah.
So because the uptake on the Steam early access wasn't amazing, it was all right, but it wasn't amazing. And so then we started working on that with these guys in China. So we started to look at Chinese mobile stuff, which meant we need to look particularly on things like free-to-play mechanics, sale of. We'd already started to put cards in the game anyway as an idea, but like the sale of card packs and those kind of things, which is more Chinese market. Anyway, as it transpired, the Chinese version, we didn't get it out when that was intended for. And we it was kind of they let it slide. We let it slide. We just kept on doing it, but we didn't. It kind of went on longer than was initially intended from both sides. And so a year later, I'm still talking to everyone on all fronts, looking for deals for the rest of the game. We've only got a mobile deal in China, and I'm actually mostly looking to sell the PC and console. Anyway, then I re-met. What happens in the business with computer games is you go to these conventions like GDC or Gamescom or whatever, these big things. The biggest ones in the world is Gamescom, which is in Cologne every year, and GDC, which is in San Francisco. And then you've got a whole bunch of others. There's like one in Japan, and there's one in. They're everywhere. Some of my mates do like them every 2 weeks. They're all the time just traveling around doing this stuff. Anyway, so I tend to do 2 or 3 a year. I was out in San Francisco I can't remember what year we're in now. This will be maybe 2.5 years ago. And then I meet with these guys who I've met a couple of times before and I quite like. And they said that football game you showed us last year, we think we might be able to do something with that. This is how this business works. You just got no idea. You make these connections with hundreds of people. I mean, we must have seen getting on for, well, actually over 100 publishers, and we've just signed 3 deals with people on this now. And it's taken 5.5 years to get this business done. Do you understand the rhythm? How slow? Get the right deal. So you rather get any deal to get the right deal. So anyway, so the Chinese deals dropped in, and then out of the blue, these American guys go, we think we've got an idea that can work for your football game. Can you meet? So I said, okay. So we met in this place called the W Hotel, which is opposite from the Moscone Centre where the GDC's been held. And it's a big business place. There's always loads of people from the games industry there and loads of talking and lots of drinking as well. And anyway, so I met with these guys and showed them the game running with a couple of these controllers working on the iPad. I said, yeah, that's what we're doing. It's, it's like what do you think? And they're like, yeah, that's perfect. We think this is going to work. And then they said to us, so this was in the March, and then they said in the May, yeah, we're thinking it could be a good fit with Apple. Apple have got something. Some of the guys had connections in Apple, and they knew that Apple Arcade was coming, and they knew that a football game that worked with controllers and touchscreen and that kind of stuff and online was exactly what Apple were after. So they said we then signed with them to work with them to go to Apple, kind of through them to go to Apple. I managed to get an amazing deal from Apple Arcade. And Apple Arcade, we're looking for the content. So there's pluses and minuses of that. So the plus is you get great money coming in. You've now got enough to like finance the whole development that we're doing in the game and everything, and and at last all that work you've put in, because now we're 3.5 years into development. It's like it's indicated that something's coming
Yeah.
back. In fact, it wasn't 3.5; it was maybe 4. I can't remember anyway. So the money starts to come in, but the downside is that Apple have got a whole bunch of pretty reasonable, but they want some exclusivity on other platforms coming out. So we withdrew the Steam version because it wasn't doing particularly well, and then we said to everyone who bought the Steam version, if you want a refund, we'll give you a full refund. But the way our business is turned at the moment is that we've got to do the mobile stuff first, because we've got the China deal already, and now we've had this Apple deal, and so we did that, and then a year later, after the Apple version first came out, the Apple version came out in November of 2019. That's right.
So it's actually been released for an iPad, is it?
Yes, it's been out for a year and a half.
Just something to go and download it. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'd be good to get your feedback as well and see what you think of it. So
yeah.
So you can play with touch, or you can play with one of these like PlayStation controller Wi-Fi one. It works with it, or an Xbox One or whatever you've got. So then we did the Apple version. That's what we've been working on mostly for the last year and a half. So we're doing different versions of that. But what's happened now is actually right now we launched Social Soccer 2021. So we're basically doing annual versions on the iPad. So Social Soccer 21 came out about 6 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that, 6 weeks ago. And then now we're doing finally actually getting the Chinese version out in China on mobile. But at the same time, about a month ago, we signed a console, PC and console deal, which I've been looking to get for 5.5 years.
Brilliant.
But finally found a good one. So that now means that it's quite good, really. So basically, the Apple Arcade version's matured quite a lot. China is at last coming out, and now we've got what we've been doing. And I know maybe it's from the outside hard to see, but all the time we've been developing stuff to go into the PC and console versions as well. So we've started working on the console versions, for example, last year. So then you get so far, and then you have to wait. So what we're going to actually embarking on right now, what my plans are right now, is the feature set for all the stuff we're adding on to the basis of what we got in Apple Arcade of Social Soccer to go into what's going to be called Social Soccer 22, which will be the version which comes out for PC and console, which will be early half of next year, first half of next year. So and then that kind of like, so from the development point of view, we've now got 3 publishing partners. So we've got Rogue going through Apple Arcade, which is our American partner, Crazy Sports and China Mobile in China, and now we've just signed with a British partner to go PC console worldwide. So this is an announcement which is going to be announced officially by our publishing partner relatively soon. So I'm not going to say what it is, but what I can tell you is our plan is to come out in the first half of next year on PC console, and that although it may appear that we've kind of diverted to mobile only, that's not what's gone on. It's just been the order we put the platforms in and the order the business came in, and what we've benefited from with all this time is a lot of enhancement to the game, which eventually is benefited by everybody.
Going to ultimately make the PC one and the PlayStation ones better.
Absolutely, because
that's great. That's brilliant news.
When you're working through Unity like us, obviously a lot of stuff is going into the core, and there's a lot of shared elements around the whole thing, and so what it's enabled us to do is each thing, the China deal and the Apple deal, it's enabled us to keep going. It's enabled us to add people into the team to add the necessary components for the next phase of what's going on. And ultimately, it means that when we come out on PC and console, a lot of those teething problems that might have been there in earlier versions will be ironed out before you can get to see it. So hopefully the end result will be good. And as I say, it's not sensible soccer. It's a sensible soccer influence game, but it's for modern machines, and
Yeah.
it's a different thing. But hopefully, people will see it as a refreshing change
Aye.
to FIFA. That's what I'm
Aye.
hoping.
No, really looking forward to it. Listen, two questions.
Yeah.
If you could give your 18-year-old self a bit of advice from your 54-year-old self, what would it be, you think? One bit of
Ooh,
advice.
one bit of advice is wow, that's a good question. When I was I've got to think back to when I was 18. I think the biggest advice, it's more of a personal advice than a work advice, is just that everything happens over time. Like, don't don't expect everything to be resolved now. Like, have trust that over time things will work
It'll
out
work out.
properly.
Yeah.
Like, if you apply yourself hard enough, eventually things should come good if you're good
Yeah.
at what you're doing. If you feel bad about something, don't worry. In a year's time, you won't feel so bad about it.
Yep.
You know what you're like when you're 18 and
It's,
everything seems so important. Like now feels so important, and
yeah.
really when you look back, it just isn't at all important.
It's
You know.
true, and I mean, I went through a bit of shit time of job wise a few years ago, and you know, and I remember somebody actually on my YouTube channel said to me, he says, you just need to realise that every every dark place, it's only temporary. Everything is only temporary. And I thought, yeah, you know what? And it's true. And I'm now in a really, really good place in my life. Of with a job and all that kind of stuff. And it's true. But you just have to accept that you don't. I mean, if you could just be given something on a plate, you don't appreciate it. And I think the fact that you've worked so hard and you've had your shit times, but ultimately it's led to everything leads to where you are right now, and it's the same with me as well. And it's just
It's exactly that. It's like, I mean, the one thing I've been really lucky in as a creative person who's quite competitive, because I'm both things, is it's been very good for me to have success when I was younger. So I'm not full of bitter hatred by now if I'm like 55 and still not had my hit. You might be talking to a very different guy. So I'm very, very grateful that's happened to me. That,
yeah.
there are some pressures and some sense of responsibility which comes with success when you're young, but it means that you've got a longer period of your life having had that. Now, of course, you've got the chance of losing it. The danger of getting it young is that you can have everything at your feet when you're 20s, and by the time you're 40, you're fucked. They can go that way, and then you're thinking, oh my god, what did I throw away? So that's what you're trying to avoid all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that there is one quote I want to share with you, which is a quote which I heard, which uh, I like, and a number of people I mentioned it to have been, but I think it's very important as you're going through life, as we are now in our part of our lives now. We know that we've got, we're in a certain seniority where we're not. We like to think we're not old yet, but we're getting to that stage where we're kind of looking back, we're reflective. We can say things like, over time, things will sort themselves out. Whereas when you're 18, you don't think about that. But also, we're aware that a certain amount of the chances and opportunities we've had in life are already behind us now. They're not going to come back. I'm not going to have that massive, boom we had with sensible soccer and Canada and that again. So I've had my time. I've had more than my share of time in that period of time. It's cool. And now if we can do pretty well with social soccer, or maybe we can get it together enough that maybe on one platform, maybe on the Nintendo Switch or something, people go, wow, this is something here. And then if some of our guys working in the team can get really good breaks for themselves with their work from that, and that will be the job done for that. I mean, it's already got money coming in, it's done okay. And for me, it vindicates myself still doing stuff now, being later. It's a different thing when you're this kind of side of your career. Just showing you're still in the game a bit is worth something. So
Absolutely.
so what the quote I like is this saying, which is, today is the youngest you will ever be. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, you're never going to get younger. It's always going to be about getting older and the future being there. But what it means is, I'm glad that, especially with sport, I've learned this. If you want to play football, don't think, oh, I didn't play football in my 20s. Just go out and play now, because in 5 years' time, I'm going to be 60. And now I'm 55 and I still can play football. Or if you want to go on a holiday somewhere, or if you want to write a book, or if you want to, whatever it is you want to do, or you want to go out clubbing and chat to everybody, do it now. Do
Grab
it
the opportunity. Yeah.
whilst it's an appropriate phase in your life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the guy who's doing these things inappropriate at this phase of his life now, because you should really do that when you're like 20 years younger, but you didn't quite do it. And I'm quite sensitive to those things, that there's different phases, especially, my oldest daughter's 33 now, my youngest is 27. My kids are older. Actually, she's 26, she's 27 next week, I think. I don't remember. But basically, you start to realize that, life is catching up with you.
Yeah.
I'm a granddad now. I've become a granddad.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So you kind of, you realize that you're going into different phases of your life, and that making sure that you kind of try to make the most of each phase as much as you can, rather than regretting what you haven't done. Like you said, you have bad times. Like I got to tell you, that time, I can brush it off now and say that me and Chris jumped up and down when we got out of that Warner deal, when we had £2 million and we tried to pay it back. I can tell you, I went to bed with palpitations every night for 6 months. That was huge stress. I wouldn't wish to go back there ever again. It's why I don't want to set up a big company ever again. I don't want that pressure ever again. I remember what it felt like. It was horrendous.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so, because it's a responsibility that it's not just your life you're going to fuck up. It's everyone around you.
Aye.
And so you kind of learn your level of stuff. Like sometimes you learn, like with sensible software, we bit off more than we could chew doing too many games at once. And you learn these things as you go forward. You learn not to panic. You look at something and think, oh, it might be a disaster. One thing I'm quite pleased what we've done with Sociable Soccer is we've just been quite calm. We've gone, we haven't got a deal this year. Let's wait and see if a good one comes along next year. And that's experience making you do that.
Of course that is.
You don't give in. You realise it's not, you can still keep going, and maybe something will come in, and a little bit of trust, a little bit of luck again. But that comes with age, and eventually you'll be in different situations. Like I've had my dad staying here. My dad stayed here for a few months this year. He came out after having a pretty serious cancer operation. Thank God.
Wow, that's good.
He's okay at the moment, and he's recovered well. But I could see my dad thinking at one stage that he had an operation. He was given a 33% chance of dying, and when he came out the other side of that, you can see that everything is just brilliant for him now. Just to be here and to be healthier, and with this cancer out of his body, and it gives you a lesson by looking at someone else who you care about, that you're close to. Wow, that really has changed my dad. I know my dad. I know him, and it has changed him to go through this experience. So I kind of look at life like that. We're always in these learning experiences, and make the most of now. Everybody, just make the most of you can now. Whilst the health is here, particularly.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I've had a few ups and downs over my life, like everybody, but I've always kind of come out the other end. And I'm 50. I'll be 54 in October. I act like a fanny. I play video games. I'm good at my job. I treat people well, and I'm currently saving for a motorbike. I've got my tattoo. Nice. I'm currently, you know what? I live life. I treat people well. I just live. I like you. I think to myself, I've maybe got 20 decent years left in me.
Yeah.
And I never ever want to. I never ever want to regret not doing stuff. I've done some things. Some things have been probably stupid, whatever. But I never ever want to look back and go, "Oh, I wish I'd done this," or "I wish, whatever." And I think
it's really true. It's really true. People know what they didn't do.
And it's probably made up. Braveheart. It's probably Mel Gibson that said this, but apparently William Wallace said, "Every man dies, but not every man lives." And that is so true. There's so many people, and I've got friends who they never ever want to. Oh, I would like to do that, but such and such, and I would maybe leave that job. Oh, but I've got the job security and all that, and I'm like, bollocks to that. I always looked at. A few years ago, I left a job after 19 years. I was really miserable, and I was, thinking, fucking hell, what's going to hang me? And I think, what's the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen? oh, I lose my job, I can't afford to pay the mortgage. What's the worst that can happen? I've got plenty of mates that I can crash out in their settee for 6 months. That's as long as and 9 times out, well, probably 99 times out of 100, you think, oh my God, my world's collapsed. This is nothing's going to go right. You actually, the reality is always a tenth of what you thought it was going to be, and you think, fuck, that was actually all right.
Exactly. Humans have become successful because we're very good at seeing potential problems and avoiding them. But the problem is, it makes us so hypercritical or not critical is the wrong word, like hyper vigilant about potential problems, which will probably never happen, and sometimes you've got to evaluate, are you worrying about something which is really nothing? And as you said, people do. There's a quote, another quote I'm going to give you. I remember it because it's a funny one, and it's about regretting what you didn't do. That Sir John Betjeman, the poet laureate that we grew up with, he's got this famous quote when he was at the end of his life, and they said, "Sir John, are there any regrets you've got?" And his quote was, "I wish I'd had more sex." That's kind of like really funny, you got this old guy in his 80s, but that's what he's thinking about. He's not thinking about, oh my God, why did I do that? He's thinking, why didn't I do that? He's thinking of these women that are around him, or men or whatever he's into, and why didn't I do it? It's so funny, And that's exactly what you said. People regretting what they didn't do.
I was actually. We've got a thing called the government have brought out this thing called Kickstarter. Basically, it's a YTS or Youth Opportunity Scheme. And I've got a couple of young boys that have just started with me. And I was saying to them today, I says, you know what? It was quite funny. We were doing a Teams call and they were like, this girl was asking, so what do you think of that? And like the two of them were like wee mice. They're like, I said, you need to speak a bit louder. And I says, look, I say, I can tell you're nervous. I says, you know what? I says, see, you get to my age. I says, I don't give a fuck. I says, I quite clearly don't give a fuck. I says, I dye my beard. I say, if somebody takes a piss out of me, I don't care. I really, really don't care. Yeah. I says, I'm a nice person. I says, I don't, and I try and say that to my daughter. I says, you need to get to a point in life where you don't care what people think about you. As long as you're a good person, you're a good human being, you're never going to get everybody who likes you. I don't really care. I says, I'm a good person, you don't care.
This thing about everybody liking you is although we've got more questions and we're going on too long, is a really important point. My observation, watching my 3 daughters go through school and how they come back with, there's been this obsession with being nice to everybody all the time. It's obsessive, even if they don't deserve being nice to. And the obsession is that you've got to watch yourself to upset somebody else. Like, upsetting people is bad. Where does that come from? Sometimes people need to be upset, right? And it's kind of made everyone so much on the back foot. And now we're seeing it borne out all over society. Like, no one's prepared to say, I don't care what you think, that guy's a cunt. Because he is. We know it. We know these people. And there's all this feeling that, I don't know, again, if you feel sorry for someone, somehow they got more value than if you didn't feel sorry for them. I don't get that either. Just because you feel sympathy doesn't mean that person's more entitled to something than someone you don't feel sympathy for. He has got a sob story. He doesn't have any more value because he has got a sob story. And everything's gone in this weird way where it's kind of like passive aggression on a societal level. And we did grow up with that. We grew up with I view our generation, our broad generation, I think it's called the older part of Generation X or whatever it might be. We're like a transition between the old days and the new days. Like, I still remember watching my grandfather mending lawnmowers in the shed. Like, no one does that these days, but being mega resourceful, people who've gone through rationing, people who knew having, even in our country, not having a lot, it's not nothing by poverty in India standards, but getting by on very little in a Western society, and total reverse of some of the values now about being nice to everyone and accepting everything and not questioning everything. And for us, for us, the lack of respect for what people like that did. You know, this concept that people who are baby boomers just took away from a generation. It's nasty because most people, if I look at my parents, I guess are in the baby boomer generation, I think, or they just worked hard to earn some money to get our family a little bit further up a ladder. So someone like me had enough of an education. I grew up in a flat in the east end of London, in Romford. You know, I'm not from a posh background, and just to give me enough education and enough culture, if you like, to be able to like stay on a level and maybe make some career for myself, which I have done, as it turns out. You know, and they just sacrificed a lot for their family and for their work, actually, and that people have the temerity to turn around and accuse them of like robbing people of a future is to totally not understand the sacrifice made. Well, like my grandparents' generation that fought in a war, and then and in my case on both sides, because my mum's German, so they both fought both sides of the war. And then you've got parents who just basically worked hard to get. If you look in the UK, I'm guessing it's pretty much the same all over. To get from what was very much working class to like some kind of lower level middle class, or just the next thing away from that. And okay, everyone made that transition, but a lot of people did. You know, we've ended up in slightly better off than our parents or our grandparents were, really, if you look around us in general. And that's through their hard work. And it offends me that people, what offends me most of all is their ignorance of not understanding what really happened. You know, so I feel like the biggest thing which aggravates me is that the lack of resourcefulness and the lack of understanding. You just need to apply yourself with hard work, and rewards come slowly. And all this kind of stuff. And somehow I feel it's our duty to act as this bridge to like go, with our kids, because they're now our kids, these people, and go, look, I know what it might appear like things have been like, but it wasn't really like that, because their situation was different. That, very different. They'd just come out of a war, and their parents had just come out of a previous war. And I look at us now. I mean, I was born 66. We're both born 66, right? So that's like 21 years after the end of World War II.
I know.
I mean, it's nothing. It's like 21 years ago was 2000. Do you remember 2000?
Aye.
When we did that? Well, that's like the end of the war for us being born. It's like, it's nothing, man.
Aye, I know.
And now we realise that we're not that generation. We're not this new generation. We are very much in the middle of these things at the moment. And I just hope that as we get older and become the older generation, we still remember these things. And talking about these people that are determined to redefine everything that we know as normality to being weird or somehow against them or somehow whatever. To going, I don't care what you say, it's just reality. All the you can make up all the fakeness you want, but there are certain differences which aren't going to go away because it's just reality. And all the willpower in the world can't change things, which are just like as plain as a fucking nose on your face. And I kind of feel like there's got to be a way of getting that message across to people in a way that doesn't appear to be. Although I kind of feel, what's the word? It just aggressive is not the right word. It just irritates the hell out of me that people can't see the obvious stuff in front of them. It just makes you go, why can't you see? You're trying to twist reality to your version of what you want things to be to suit in with the narrative that you want to go with at the moment. I mean, it's obviously not. It's obviously not correct, and it's obvious that what's been the same way for thousands of years was that way for a bloody good reason, because that's what it was. It's a bit like those arguments you used to get at school with kids trying to be clever, going, well, maybe it's not a table, maybe it's a cloud made of grapes and monkey droppings, and maybe it's in another time. No, it's a fucking table and your coffee's on it. That's kind of how I feel about now at the moment.
Listen, the very last question, John, it's a one-word answer. Commodore 64 or Spectrum?
Commodore 64.
Excellent. Listen, John, bloody hell. I thought this might go to maybe 2 hours. 4 hours and 26, bloody hell, mate. Listen, go and apologise to your wife for this Scottish guy taking up your...
She's happy to get rid of me for a while.
It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege, and I hope I get to meet you at some point in real life once we get back to normal. And I'll buy you some beer. So listen, John, thank you very, very much for taking your whole night out, and plus the other night there as well.
No problem, man. Fun.
Good stuff. And I just want to finally, if anybody's actually watched this to the very end, thank you very, very much. So it's been excellent. So listen, John, good luck to England on Sunday. How do you think it's going to go? What do you think?
I told you, this is my lucky shirt. I mean, when I wear this, I've got my lucky Norwich socks when I'm supporting Norwich, but it's become the shirt with England.
Prediction. What do you think?
My prediction is 0-0 on penalties, and I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I think that Italy and England have actually got a very good defence. The Italians are always mega good at defending. I think it's going to be a very cagey match because both of these teams, they're safety first. And I think we're going to see that. I think the Italians have got some great forward players. We have as well. But both teams are mostly about very, very solid at the back. So I predict a cagey affair, and it's going to get to where England have never been before, which is penalties in the final. And I wouldn't want to call it. I just feel it's in the stars. It's going to get to penalties, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be 0-0 before we get there.
Oh, cool. Listen, John.
Just crossing my fingers and hoping for a miracle.
Listen, John, thanks very much for joining, man. Take care. Cheers, buddy. See you, man. Bye.